Hey class, so we're back, and in this exercise we're going to be creating a lower third. It's going to have some bounce to it, it'll have some overshoot to it, a trim path, as well as some track mats for the image, as well as the whiskers and spice level text. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our exercise 5.1 and download the files for this exercise. So download those, and then once your file is in your downloads folder, double click it to unzip it, and then open it up, and let's open up the AEP file. Now notice that this all came in a single folder. That is a great thing, and that is the result of going to File, Dependencies, and Collect Files. So that includes all of the sub-files, all of the other compositions that are in this particular project, so that we can all start off at the same point. So remember, when you're moving from computer to computer, you always want to collect all your files and take the folder that was generated by collecting all these files and take that to your other computer. And that way you have all of your files together. All right. So let me just hit cancel on that. So this is what we're going to see when we open this file. Notice that we also have the guides on the outside here. So I'm just going to go to Fit. So these are the title and safe guides. Let me just hide this cat image for a second. We want to make sure that all of our lower thirds are, first of all, in the lower third of the page, and then also within these lines. So I have set that up for you where they're inside the kind of safe zone. But just in case for your lower third, I want to make sure that we're inside this safe zone. If you get annoyed by these guides and want to turn them off, you can just click here and turn off title action safe. All right. So we've got a ton of different layers. We have one main comp, so that's the one that we're working on. And then we're going to create some little comps within it. So right now our file is not animated, but it is 7 seconds long. So 7 seconds is a pretty good length for a lower third, for a typical lower third. All right, so let me just zoom on in. So I'm going to use Command and plus, or I guess Command and equals, and then the space bar with the hand tool. So I can zoom in here. Let's zoom out a little bit. All right. So let's think about our line of attack. The first thing to know is that this cat image is going to become a track mat on the image placeholder, and then both the cat image has a specific outline box as well. So let's do that first. So I'm going to go to my image placeholder layer, and I'm going to make sure my toggle switches and modes down at the bottom here is turned on, so that we can see the options for the track mat. So under image placeholder, let's change our track mat to the cat image. And by default, it will turn into an alpha track mat so that the image doesn't have any transparency, so we're not going to see anything. But if you click on this and turn it to a Luma track mat, we'll get this nice black and white image of our cat on the image placeholder. Cool. And so we can make sure we turn off that cat image, and then we have our image outline. All right, so all three of these things, let's turn them into a pre-comp or a group. So let's right click and pre-compose these three and turn them into into a little composition. So let's just call this cat, hit OK. And now if we need to edit these, we can always double click to open that pre-comp and edit it if we need to, but for the most part, I'm just going to close that. All right, so that is job done number one. The other thing is I want to group these spice level boxes. So this is a little spicy kitty. So I'm going to select all of those. And for these, let's do the same thing. So let's right click, pre-compose, and let's call this spice. And hit OK. Cool. So that's really clearing up our levels, or our layers, and making it a little easier to understand and work with. All right, now the last thing is the text spice level is not showing. So I'm just going to pull this up to the top layer. There we go, and we can see it again. Perfect. So now I can reduce the size of this layers a little bit, so we have a little tiny bit more area to work with. Okay, so the next thing that I want to work on is let's start animating. So let's turn off all of our top layers and work with let's start with our cat layer first. So this is going to come up first. So now let's toggle switches and modes again so that we're getting our normal interface. I'm also going to turn on this tiny little like snowflake icon on both of my new compositions. So what that does is render a continuously rasterize or create a higher resolution preview of your compositions. So that's always important to turn on too. All right, so for this little cat, we are going to have it scale up and bounce onto our screen. So let's hit S for scale. I'm going to go forward just a tiny bit, maybe 4 frames, and let's hit our scale stopwatch. So that's going to set our first keyframe. I'm going to go forward about, I don't know, how about 10, 15 frames. And I'm going to hit keyframe. So this is this tiny little blue button over on the left here, so I can set an additional keyframe. So basically I'm going to go back to my first keyframe, click on that, and we're going to start at 0. And then it's going to go to 100. Uh-oh. Do you see what just happened? So this movement over to the left here is an indication that we need to reset our pivot point. So let's delete these. And instead we want to grab our little cat and go to Layer, Transform, and Center Anchor Point in Layer Content. And I feel like that didn't actually work. So I'm going to hold down Command and double click on this and see if that works. Nope. So all else fails, just grab your center point and let's position it here. So your anchor point should be this little round circle, and make sure that it's pretty much in the center of your object. All right. So now that we've done that, let's try this one more time. So we're going to start here around frame, let's say frame 20, it's going to be at 120. So let's set a scale. Frame, let's see, 26, let's say it's back to 100. And then it's going to start at 0. Cool. So it's going to overshoot, go large, and then settle back into small. So now if we just play this, it will have a pop-up effect, but it's not going to feel that pizzazz or the wow. So what we want to do is actually select our first and last keyframes, right click, and use our Easy Ease. And so now if we play this, we're going to have a little more of a bump or a bounce. The last thing we want to do is go to our graph editor. So I'm going to make this a lot bigger so you can see. In your graph editor, make sure that you have your speed graph rather than your value graph selected. So that's the second button on the bottom here. Allows you to do edit speed graph. And then it's a little tricky, but I want you to grab the very first kind of yellow dot for the first keyframe, and then there's a little yellow dot for the second keyframe, and just pull them to the right and left. And what this is doing is making a very steep speed ramp That's going to give us the snap and the pizzazz that we're looking for. All right, so once you're done with that, let's close out this graph editor. I'm going to make this smaller again. And if we hit play, there you go. It's got a nice bounce to it. All right, we're going to do the same bounce animation to our 3 or 5 different spice boxes. So let's grab all of our little spice boxes here, and I'm going to zoom out so we can see them. There they are. I'm going to switch over to my arrow tool and make sure that your boxes have a constrained proportions link. If you can't see the link for some reason, sometimes this menu gets squished, so you can pull this over on the right. Just make sure that the proportions are locked with this little link. All right, so these boxes are going to start at 0. They're going to overshoot to like 130%, and then they'll settle back to the original 100%. So let's go to like frame, I don't know, 4. And with all of our layers selected, press S for scale, and we should be able to adjust all of these at once. So for our first keyframe, we're going to set this to 0, and everything should go to 0. And click on our stopwatch, and that just set our first keyframe. We're going to go forward about 12 frames. And next one is going to be about 130. And hit enter. So this went pretty big. And they actually went a little too tall. So I'm just going to adjust them down to like 70. There we go. And then for 10 more frames, or about 6 more frames, I'm going to adjust this to 100. And the second one should be about, 50. That's fine. Cool. Okay, so let's just see what this is doing. It's going too far and then settling back to their approximate size. So I'm going to grab these first few frames and the last few frames, the first frames and the last frames are already selected. Right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and then we're going to do the same thing with our graph editor. So this is a little tricky again, so I'm just going to scale on up. I'm going to look for that very first value, so the very first little yellow dot, and then the last yellow dot, and I'm just going to click them a little bit. And it's okay, I know there's a bunch of different values because we're scaling in the X and the Y direction at once. But just try and grab those values if you can. And let's see, let's go back down and play. There you go. So that happened really fast. So the last thing I'm going to do is hide my graph editor, and I'm just going to spread these out a little bit. So let's grab these. And grab these. I'm just going to drag them to the right, deselect these ones, and drag them to the right again. So you can make adjustments. There we go. Anytime you like. So I could even, that's nice. It has more of a bounce than a, I don't know, too sharp of a feel. Great. Now the last thing is that these are all going to come on one at a time. So I can grab each layer individually. So Spice 1, I believe, is the first one we want to come up. So I'm going to leave that one there. I'm going to grab Spice 2 and just offset it a bit. 3, offset, 4, offset, and 5, offset. Perfect. So they'll just come up one at a time. Perfect. All right. So if you haven't done it, save. And I'm just going to save this as demo 1. Cool. So now we can move back to our main composition. And let's turn on our spice layer. And let's just see what we've got by scrubbing through. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. There we go. So right now this is coming on immediately. So I'm going to just grab my spice layer and offset this as well so that the cat comes up first. And we can adjust this timing as we go along. All right. So let's turn to our attention to the main title. So this main title, I'm going to zoom back one more time. This main title box is going to come on, and it's going to come scale up basically from the left side to the right side. So if we click on this and grab our anchor point tool, or press Y for your anchor point tool, let's grab that anchor point and move it. I'm going to move it like super to the left here. And this is going to come on slightly after the cat starts moving. So how about here? And so this one's going to be a scale as well. So let's just press S for scale, set a stopwatch keyframe, and to finish, I'm going to set, let's see, we've already got one keyframe at 100. I'm going to go along, and you can see there's a set keyframe button on the left here. So I'm going to click that little blue button, and that will give me my 100 over there. Go back to the initial keyframe, and I'm just going to change this to 0. So now if we scroll through, there we go. First the cat will come up, and then this will come up. And it's going to scale uniformly. If we did not want it to scale uniformly, we could turn off that little lock button. So it would start at 0. And then let's say 0% wide, but 100% high. So you can see that it's a little taller here. Let me just zoom in a little bit. And then over to the right, it's going to be 100 and 100. So you can see that it keeps that height and just kind of folds out, which is a nice effect. Let's easy ease these two. So select them both, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and then we are good for that one. All right, next one is this little right accent. So let's turn that one on. And once this main menu bar opens, we're going to have the accent bar kind of fly into place. It's going to overshoot and then settle into this position. So let's just go a little bit after the main title has come on, or when it's about to come on. Let's go a little bit past that, and I'm just going to click this layer and P for position. So click the stopwatch. So this is where it's going to end up. Before it ends up here, it's going to overshoot. So I'm going to backtrack a little and actually move this to the left. So I'm just going to hold down Shift. Oh, I need my arrow tool. Hold down Shift, and let's just click this to the right a little bit. And then I'm kind of working backwards here. So once this is coming on, we're going to hold Shift and move it back so it hides underneath the cat. So let's hit play and see what that looks like. There you go. So that works well, except for the fact that it is there when it doesn't need to be. So at the very, very beginning, you can see it underneath the cat picture here. So let's, first of all, let's easy ease these. So keyframe assistant, easy ease. You can do the graph editor if you like. And then we also want to have a scale. So basically at this point here, you need to press S for scale, and we need to set a keyframe for it. So it's at this point, it is 100% in size. And then let's go backtrack a frame or two. And at that point, it needs to be at 0. So it's just going to pop on and move to the right and then settle. Perfect. So let's play this. All right, so this is a little fast, so I'm just going to do the P for position and maybe just move these out a little bit. See how that feels. Maybe they need to go earlier. How about that? So they feel more like they're part of it. There you go. That's nicer. Okay. And please feel free to play around with these timings. All right, so we're almost there. We have our whiskers and our spice level text. And then we also have our National Geographic logo and our subheading box. So let's put our subheading box underneath our spice level, because that's where that is coming from. And then let's grab our National Geographic logo. So this is going to be a simple trim path. So once the cat comes on, we're going to start a trim path with that one. So let's grab that National Geographic logo layer, open up the kind of down arrow, and click on the Add menu. So remember, this is where we can add a bunch of different options, and select Trim Paths. For our trim paths, let's open up, and it's going to end. Click on the End button. I think I want it to finish right about, I think maybe after these come on. How about that? So I'm going to click on the little diamond over on the left here, turned it to blue. And then for our starts, we're going to start it at 0. And then I'm just going to move this further so that it doesn't start until the other elements have started. Oh, sorry, I reversed it. So let's just reverse these two. So it's going to end at 0 and then go to 100. There we go. And we can also play around with this timing as well so that it kind of finishes a little later. All right, and let's add an easy ease because we're just like that. We like to add all of our extra little elements. There we go. Perfect. All right, I'm going to press U to hide those elements, and I can press U again to hide that. Let's just do U on all of our little layers here so we're more organized. All right, we've got 2 more things. So one is the spice level and the subhead box, and then the last one is the whiskers. So let's add the subheading box. So I want that to start coming on before the little spice boxes come on. So let's go to subhead box, turn this on. And this one, let's just do a basic scale with some overshoot. So I'm going to press S to scale. At this point, I want it on, so I'm just going to hit the position keyframe. And I want it completely gone at this point, so I'm just going to set these to 0. And uh-oh. These are going from the wrong side. So let's grab our anchor point tool and move the anchor point to the left. And let's see, there we go. So it's gonna jump out in this direction. Perfect. So now the last thing with this one is we want this subhead box to be underneath the cat. So I'm just gonna reorder that. Cool. There we go. All right. So now we have 2 pieces of text. So the spice level and the whiskers. With this text, we're actually going to use track mats. So we want our whiskers text to kind of move in from the top here. And we want it to be invisible until it kind of falls into place. So the way that we can do that is by adding a layer, new and solid. And I'm just going to make it black so that you guys can see it. Zoom out a little bit. And then I'm going to resize with my arrow tool. resize this solid just so that it kind of fits and it acts like as a mask above where this whiskers text is going to be. And I'm going to rename this track mat whiskers, so I know what it is. And let's turn off the visibility because we actually don't need the visibility of the track mats. And I'm just going to move it to the very bottom. So now my whiskers layer, we're going to add it as a track mat. So let's toggle switches and modes, go to mats and track mat whiskers, and leave it as an alpha mask. But you can see that it disappeared my text. So I'm going to invert the alpha mask. There you go. And so now we can see it. Cool. However, let's press P for position. And I'm just going to click. Let's see, this is where I want whiskers to end up. And I want it to drop in about maybe here. So I'm going to set a keyframe. And then I'm going to reverse myself. And I'm going to have it drop in from above. So I'm just going to click this second value. There you go. Let me move that forward. Okay. So it's going to start hidden. And then as it moves out of that area where the track mat is, it comes into place. So let's add an easy ease on these because we're fancy. All right, let's check that out. There we go. Perfect. All right, one last piece is our spice level. So we're going to do the exact same thing with the track mat. Just the spice level is going to come from below and move to the top. So let's go to layer and add a new solid that's going to be used as track mat. So let's call this track mat spice. And we're going to grab the arrow tool and we're just going to scale it. And I'm going to move it into place so that it's covering kind of the bottom of this box. And then I'm going to hide it and move it down to below because we don't need to see our track mats for them to work. Go to our spice level and we're going to turn on track mat for the spice. Turn on invert. So we have an alpha track mat that is inverted. And then we're going to animate the position. So at this point, so probably want spice level to come on as these little spices are coming up, or maybe as they start to come up. So I'm going to set a key position, and I kind of always set my last or my final position first, and then I like backtrack for the movement. So then I'm going to click and drag on this one, the second value, so the Y value, and move it out of place. And now it's going to move into place. Let's offset it a little bit. So I'm going to grab both of these, move them over, and easy ease them. Cool. All right, so let's see the whole thing. There we go. So you can definitely play around with these. I'm just going to press U to see my start and end for these keyframes. I'm actually going to move them a little later. So that's the last thing that happens. And we can press play. Perfect. All right, so that is our lower third. I would like you to also animate it going away. So for that, I will make a separate video that you can watch, or you can try it yourself and see what you come up with. Basically, we want to have this all on screen and held at least for a few seconds. So and then maybe around 5.5 seconds, we can start reversing things. And it'll be up to you to change these values. Also, you can change the text for whiskers to a cat name that you like. So Kitty, it's my cat. or whatever. Use your own creativity, nothing offensive, of course. And then turn it in. So make sure that you have the final part with all of these pieces disappearing. And if you want to see a tutorial for that, that'll be in the next video. All right. Finally, once you're all done with these going away, with this, so you should get to a completely blank screen at frame 7 seconds. Then make sure you're doing File, Export, Add to Media Encoder Queue, and saving it as an animated GIF. And I'll show that in the next video too. All right, thanks class.